So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining in and welcome to the physical session on India's impact investing landscape for family offices. Hearty welcome to Prachi, Chairperson IIC, and also to Guneet, who is now would be joining us in some time. Incidentally, just to let all of you know, Guneet has flown in specifically from Hong Kong just to attend this event. Thank you so much, and also thank you to others who have joined in for this event, especially you, Dinesh, Arvind, Srini, and Stalin, who's flown in from Bangalore. I think 4 people from Bangalore. Thank you so much. And from the family offices, we have people joining us online from US, Canada, UK, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Monaco. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. And thank you to others as well for joining in. Just to set the context, this is how we are scheduled and this is how the event will take place. We will have opening remarks by Prachi Jain, Chairperson IIC and Senior Director with MSTF, after which I will give an introduction to the India Impact Investing Landscape, followed by a keynote address by Guneet Director Group. We will also have sectoral presentations, one on agriculture by George Thomas from Mentera Ventures, and then on climate investing by Stalin from Green Artha. This will be followed by an open dialogue between family offices and India Impact GPs, which will be moderated by Mona, and Neha will be coordinating that. The format for the open dialogue will be explained before the open dialogue starts. We will close with the curtain raiser for Prabhav 2024, which is scheduled for 12th and 13th of September at the Grand in New Delhi. And after we are done with the physical session, we will all move to JW Marriott for a cocktail session. So thank you so much, everyone. Just to let you know, there are certain instructions for those who are joining us online. I would request everyone to change their names to the first name and also mention their organizations. And I would also request everyone to have their cameras on, as it helps us to communicate better in a digital session and so that we can also see you in the room where we are seated currently. Thank you so much, Robert, Isha, Asos, Isma, thank you so much. Should anyone from the online session or people who have joined us online wish to ask anything, please use the hand raise option to ask questions or share an opinion. And we will try and involve as many people, but in case in case you guys want to ask questions, please raise your hands. Online members are requested to be present from 4:30 to 7. Also, for a better view, I would request the online members to click on the 3 dots on top right corner of your screen and choose option move to stage. And then in the layout option, please select side by side. In case anyone is having any problem online, request you to please put your query or put your problem on the chat box and someone from the IIC team will help you in addressing that. Now over to Prachi for her welcome and opening remarks. Thank you.
Thanks, Girish. Welcome, everyone. A very warm welcome to everyone who's in the room, has flown in especially for this. Thanks to Guneet for coming in all the way from Hong Kong for this. And everyone online, I know it must be odd timings for many of you, but it's great to be together in this phygital model. At least we get to see some of you here and hope that we can keep it interactive so that those of you online can also enjoy it. I know there are some there are some old members and there are many new. So I will just start with a brief background of IIC and then Girish will talk more about it. But essentially, we are a member organization for impact investors in India. And our hope is as a member organization to be all things impact investing in India as far as partnerships are concerned. The more we exchange with each other, policies concerned, and there is a separate stream which works around that for adequate representation of impact investors as a separate entity. And you all, I hope, are already on our mailing list because publications is our third pillar, we publish, a report, an annual report on impact investing, as well as, everything that is happening. So there are many pillars which are running in our work, but the most important one is this: to be the connection between people who want to know more about impact investing and are, interested in connecting more with that network. We are a 65 members organization right now. There is some change in our work, and you will see more trying to do more of these small group format events, which are special interest group events as well. We recently did the India Room at Singapore, for which some of our members from India actually joined in Singapore with potential investors from Singapore interested in India. We have many such events coming up, and I have a full list of them, which Girish has asked me to read out. But since they may be interesting to a larger group, I will do that. So there is a Nordic and Scandinavian investor meet in Mumbai in July. We just have a members meetup like the one which we have at the JW at the end of the day today. So it's a members meetup in Bangalore in July. We have our flagship event, Prabhav, which is a biannual event, which is happening later this year in September. India Room, the same as Singapore in Hague in October. We'll also be there at COP in November. And then the end of this year is a very special end of the year for us. We're completing 10 years as IIC. So we'll do a special event in Mumbai mostly at the end of the year. Today's topic is family offices, a group which is, I would say, we've not been able to do as much for and want to do more for. We have 3 family offices in IIC. One is Caravel Group, Raintree, and our time back. And we see that they play a very special role in terms of an interesting asset class for them, which gives that benefit of being able to do societal good along with financial returns, which is what impact investing is all about. But we as Impact Investors Council feel that we've not done enough to be able to bring in people from the family offices, connect and share with our funds. So this is the first effort. Please let us know, what more we can do in that direction. But we'll have Guneet talk about it. We'll also have, some of the coordinated sessions about it. And, the reason why we put some of those sectoral presentations that Girish was talking about was with that purpose, that what is really some of the sectors which we think are interesting sectors for family offices, what really is happening in those sectors and why are they interesting. And then we'll do Mona will help us have a coordinated open dialogue for it. So yes, that's what, I wanted to share with all of you, that this is first of our many events. We want to keep it small groups so that all of us engage, and please do engage when Mona opens it up for all of us to be able to talk more, and do stay back till 7 p.m. to join the promised happy hour by Girish.
By IIC. Thank you so much, Prachi. Very kind of you. Now we move on to a presentation on India's impact investing landscape. India, that is Bharat, is a land of many cultures and has been a very old civilization. It is said of India that India lives in many centuries at the same time. Now, India is emerging as a global success story with a stunning space program, the world's fastest growing economy, and a full stack digital economy. India also has the 4th largest stock market in the world, 7th rank in the Climate Change Performance Index, and is poised to have the 3rd largest construction market globally by 2025. However, there are still miles to go. There is a scope to improve per capita income. There are efforts needed to tackle poverty, efforts needed to bolster and empower women. Farmers continue grappling with multiple issues. There is unequal access to healthcare facilities. Pollution is endangering livelihoods. IIC works towards attracting investments in the areas of affordable housing, agriculture, climate, disability, education, financial inclusion, gender, health, livelihood, and tech for development. IIC itself is a decade-old industry body. We are a not-for-profit entity and currently have about 60 prominent impact investors and ecosystem players as our members. Here is a glimpse of our members and partners and network partners. We are largely, in our member base, we largely have impact investors and a few ecosystem players. And then as network partners, we have prominent ones like GIN, GST, AVPN, and UNDP. A question that everyone asks us is why India? And this is our reason. There is political stability with democratic rule, a stable and non-fluctuating currency. A return on impact investments have ranged between 20 to 40%. There is a robust and well-regulated stock exchange. There is a robust IT sector with skilled workforce. There are responsive legal recourses available. There is a high density of impact-specific population. Proven record for impact measured data which is available. The government is welcoming, and then there is also a large English-speaking population. When we have a look at the India impact investing landscape, we will be taking you sector-wise. And when we speak of agriculture, we have seen close to $2 billion being invested over the past 3 years in 165 deals. And the prominent LP investors have been Artha Impact, British International Investment, and the Rockefeller Foundation. In climate tech, with a focus on renewable energy, sustainable transportation, and waste management, we have seen close to $2.6 billion being invested over the past 3 years in 339 deals, with prominent LP investors being British International Investment, MacArthur Foundation, and the Rockefeller Foundation. Similarly, in education, we have seen close to $1.3 billion being invested over the past 3 years in 81 deals, with prominent LP investors being British Asian Trust, MSDF, and the Lemelson Foundation. Under financial inclusion, we have seen $4.2 billion being invested over the past 3 years in 202 deals, with prominent LP investors being MSDF, Rockefeller Foundation, and FMO. And in healthcare, we have seen close to $2.2 billion being invested over the past 3 years in 112 deals, with prominent LP investors being the Rockefeller Foundation, UBS, and UBS Optimus Foundation. Similarly, in technology for development, we have seen programs like digital literacy program, mobile healthcare services, and smart agriculture solutions, garnering close to $3.2 billion over the last 3 years in 158 deals, with prominent LP investors being British International Investment and ONI. If we were to take a deeper look at 2023's leading sector, which is climate tech, we find that greater than 40% of the deals in 2023 were made in climate tech startups, of which sustainable mobility attracted 534 million across 55 deals. In energy, we saw 84 million being pumped in across 16 deals. In climate smart agriculture, we saw 80 million being pumped in across 13 deals. And waste management and circular economy attracted close to $80 million across. If we were to now have a look at exit multiple and returns on impact, we will take two examples, one of Gava Capital and second of Mentera. Gava has had an average IRR of 15% with a holding period of 6 years. Gava is an impact-focused fund with investments in agriculture, financial inclusion, and climate tech. On Mentera, they have a target IRR of 20% with a holding period of 5 years. Mentera, again, is an impact-focused fund with interests in agriculture, financial inclusion, climate tech, education, and technology for development. If we were to look at the example of Unitas Capital, they have had 53 exits facilitated for 30 companies over the past 15 years, with an average exit multiple of 20.5x, a median IRR of 43%, and greater than 10x exit multiple observed in the renewable energy sector. The range of IRR for them is between 28 to 165%. If we were to look at Quad Invest's Health Quad Fund 1, they have an IRR of 43.9%, where 1.1x of the capital has been returned to LPs, and a greater than 4x of cash on cash return has to be delivered by the end of fund life. Similarly, on agri-tech startups, the range of IRR observed for Ankur Capital has been in the range of 30 to 50%. Now let us have a look at the Indian IPO market in 2023. There were 60 main board IPOs in 2023, which raised a total of close to $6.4 billion 46 IPOs got double-digit subscription. 32% of the IPOs delivered the median IPO returns was 32%. Greater than 50%, so 23 IPOs had returns greater than 50%, and 9 IPOs doubled over the listing price. Last year was also a record year for SME IPOs, wherein 179 SMEs got listed, and the range of premium at which over 150 SMEs were trading was between 20 to 100%. I would once again repeat, this is why India. We have political stability with democratic rule. There is stable and non-fluctuating currency. The return on impact is in the range of 20 to 40%. There is a robust and well-regulated stock exchange, a robust IT sector with skilled workforce, a responsive legal recourse, high density of impact population, a proven record for impact measured data which is available, a welcoming government, and a large English-speaking population. In the words of Prime Minister Modi, investing in India means investing in inclusion, investing in democracy, investing for the world, and investing for a better, cleaner, and safer planet. With those words, I welcome you and the family offices to invest in India. Thank you so much. I would now invite and request Mr. Guneet Banga, who is the Executive Director with the Caravel Group and founder and managing partner of Parinama. Guneet also heads the Caravel Sustainable Investments, a dedicated vehicle for companies' investment management activities focused on impact, ESG, and sustainable investing. Over to you, Guneet. Thank you.
Thanks, Girish. Thanks, for organizing this, and thanks to the IIC. Can you guys hear me? Sorry.
Thanks, dear. It's all.
Mike's everywhere. Okay, if you can't hear me, just let me know. I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you for hosting us. I think this is what I hope is the first of many such gatherings of family offices. I think, in my view, what I've learned in the last 6 years, 7 years being involved in this space is family office with their extensive capital, especially in India and globally, is going to be essential to driving impact investing and mitigating climate change, most importantly, and as well as solving other issues. Because of the factors that I think most of us really know that long-term investment horizons, looking to build family legacy, willing to collaborate and cooperate with other families due to the social and cultural ties. And we're not regulated like companies or funds or governments don't have the same differing motives, right? And something that I think I've kind of realized recently, and I'll get back into it later, but just came to me now, is there are collaborative coalitions already existing in other countries, Germany and in Europe. There are a number that I'm in touch with 50, 70, 80 family offices coming together and combining their intellectual, financial, operational capital, as well as their historic ability to run businesses, to develop next generation of businesses for the future. So I guess as Girish just said, the impact investing ecosystem in India has grown rapidly over the last decade. I think it's 20 billion in the last 4 years, give or take, has been invested.
Yeah.
That's well short of the 1 trillion we need to all that climate change, right? It's a fraction of it. And I don't mean that to discourage. What I mean to say is how much opportunity there is and how much, how much capital is actually needed, right? I also believe that fundamentally India will be the center of climate technology within the next 5 to 10 years. Given the diversity of India's population, environment, and all the issues that we have across the country, I don't think there's an environmental or sustainability or climate change or social issue that exists somewhere in the world that we don't have here in India. And given the cost basis of India and cost of living and the growing economy, if an issue can be resolved with a technology or a process or a new initiative, it can easily be adapted for the rest of the developing world. My view is that for the last 10 years since the 2015 Kyoto Protocols, the whole approach has been backwards. We've been led by the developed countries who are developing technologies that developing countries can't afford, or they can afford to buy them and then they can't afford the scale and generate the impact. I guess what my view is, and then what we are trying to do as Parinama is two things. Create a collaborative coalition of family offices, PFIs, and venture capitalists who are motivated by the same driving force, and that's the 25-year investment horizon we're looking at, breaking down into 5 years. And it's not a 3-year investment, make your 10x, get out, and don't really consider the longer term impact of what you're doing. Like sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here. I guess family offices have their extensive business networks, resources, and access to politicians, to financing sources. That they've got to be central to leading the charge. They've got to be at the front end because they're willing to take on risk generally, because new innovation means our companies will continue to exist and our family legacies will continue to exist. That's one of the driving forces. Secondly, focus on Generation Next and this transition of wealth, which is going to occur in the next sort of decade or two. Never has so much wealth been transferred from one generation to another. And how that will be utilized, especially by families, is going to be essential. I think my view, and I disagree with the UN in this, is SDG 1 should be climate, because if we don't solve climate change, all the rest is relevant. I mean, they interact, but and I say that a little bit strongly, but if we don't have a viable climate to exist in 50, 100 years' time, then what else we do is largely irrelevant. I think that's my view. I'm happy to debate that with anyone at any time. And that's one thing I think is important in this group, is that everyone has their own views. And putting together a group of Indian family offices and global family offices to collaborate and determine, where to invest, how to invest, given our relative backgrounds and operational experience, target goals for impact, etc., is, I think, the first stage in what we need to do going forward. Secondly, I think we need to standardize a number of aspects of what the impact investing sector or industry looks like in India, because right now anybody can call themselves an impact fund, but we don't know what impact is actually being made. But I think I'd call on the IIC to kind of work with government policy and actually have a definition for that, so that everyone knows what impact means and how they define impact. And tied into that is, I know now we're starting to measure and manage the impact that investments we made are generating, right? The problem with that is that everybody has a different way of doing it, different reporting standards, different methods of calculating impact sector by sector, differences that you can't aggregate it very easily. So we don't know if something that I'm doing is offsetting something in the same process, right? Again, I think there needs to be standardized or a one framework for impact measurement and management across the sector that all participants utilize. So then you're sharing information openly. We can see what the cumulative impact we're making is, and everyone is on the same page. I think we need to level the playing field so that more participants, not just Indian but foreign family offices, will have faith in the integrity, the standards, the ability to legislate and regulate what is happening in India. Because I think my travels around the world speaking to investors, and large family investors, some of whom have joined today, and with some of the international investment banks and their wealth management units is people struggle to trust the Indian legislative bureaucratic system because of what they read in the papers. There's always some scandal, and that's not the reality. And again, having a core group of families defining and leading the way, saying, we're going to be operating ethical, designing an ethical framework and a code of conduct for the sector, right? If you're involved in this, this is how we behave, this is our mission. And again, it's up for debate what that looks like. But the time has come that we come together. Everyone's been working independently and, there's still conflict, corporates are still looking to, generate profit at the expense of somebody else. And countries are never ever going to agree on a global sort of, there's not really one captain of the ship on a country or a corporate level, at least in my view. Maybe sectorally, yes, but I think within family offices, we can agree that our legacies and what we do, not just financially, but more importantly, to create a better world for our children, our grandchildren, and generations to come, far outweighs the financial returns that we make in the short term. We've been blessed to have made the resources and built the resource capabilities, networks, the businesses that combined together, the impact that we can have will be a multiple of what we each do individually. So this is something that I was adamantly speaking to Prachi about earlier, is that this is something we need to establish soon and see. Sorry, is that a question?
I think so.
No, please carry on.
Right, and start to work together, right? Across sectors, families from different industries, different generations, because collaboration, the more diverse the group is, the more ideas we have, the more innovative we can be, and the more impact we can actually make, right? And I think it's up to family offices really to do two things. One is to de-risk new technologies as they come out by taking a risk and providing a first revenue contract. And plans in place that I'm working on with various accelerators and things like that. And secondly is to provide operational experience at the pre-seed, seed, Series A stage so that startups are well-governed, policies and procedures in place so that they're not just kind of chasing growth at the cost of not building a sustainable business without the frameworks around corporate. My view is at a Series A, I want my company to be ready to IPO in terms of the corporate structure, governance, policy. There'll be a lot of gaps, of course, but you fill those as the company grows. I also think this focus on purely top line growth in revenue and in customer acquisition, it's slightly flawed because you forget to look at, but they don't even look at what impact that's having, right? It can be detrimental. We have no way of measuring that early stage impact or destruction of value and negative impact on the planet. So then again, that's something that part of the IMMs can come into place. So there's various initiatives that I think need to come together in India to take the impact investing industry sector to the next stage and really magnify what we're doing, right? And it'll need to involve all stakeholders, from the government, from family offices, the DFIs, all the investor bases. We will need to speak to international institutions, international families, regulators, educational institutions like IITs and the global. I'm speaking to a number of universities in the U.S. Is that my time? Okay.
Please go on.
Just, I raise the hand when it's time for me to stop, but I'll keep going. It needs to come together in the next 5 years so that we have 20 years to really make an impact. And the next 5 years, I think, are going to be crucial for development of India, the impact investing ecosystem, led by the family office. We must take the lead on that because as we lead, a lot of families here control and run, large corporations, right? So as corporations become in play, their peers they can drag along, and it shows the world that we are doing things properly, systematically, in a defined strategic way. Identifying what needs to be addressed today versus what we put on tomorrow, right? And recognizing that there's going to be failures and blow-ups and multiple iterations of technology. What works today, let's say in the EV sector, may not be effective in 5 years. So how are we planning for that? And, I think take a 25-year view, break it down into 5-year increments, much like the Chinese do, and I think they've been pretty successful at growing their economy. Recently, it's a concern, but it needs to be much more institutionalized and formalized because throwing money around in every deal and investing, that's great, but what's the rationale behind that? We have there's no framework, there's no kind of measurement standard, there's no industry-wide expectation or of how we should be allocating capital, and based on what impact capital. And that'll change sector by sector, and we need to find all that, right? So there's a lot of work to be done, and I don't think relying on just the government to do it. I think we need to take the lead and start speaking with the government and defining policy for the next generation of technology and industries. Given the fact that many of the large family offices have strong relationships with government, right? And the fact that we've got another 8 years of stable policy, hopefully, and Prime Minister Modi's focus on the environment and climate, and the fact that we display to the world what we can do as G20. We need to build on that, and family offices have to be at the forefront. People will follow if we lead. And I'll leave it at that. I just think we need to come together. I mean, it's the end of the world, frankly, and I don't joke, right? If we don't get to net zero, then the human race has a time limit, a ticking clock, whether that's 100 years, 150 years, whatever it is. We're already experiencing the impact of climate change. The last 12 years have been hardest years on record. This one's going to be the hardest on record again, right? We're seeing flood, we're seeing wildfires. London last year was about 47 degrees in the summer. That's insane, right? And we're going to be seeing more of this and more unexpected events and environmental disasters, I guess. The entire biodiversity bioscope of the world is changing. We need to start looking at that. That's going to cost twice as much to resolve that issue as it does climate change. And we haven't even started looking at that, right? Bumblebees are going extinct. If they go extinct, we're done, right? And there's no focus on that, right? Whether it's the international media, politicians, whoever it is, the information isn't getting out, the right information. It's very selective. And again, something that we can do because I frankly don't care what people think of me, and I will seek truth to power and damn the consequences, as Neha knows. We need to be aggressive in saying this is what is needed, right? In order to do that, we need to partner up, and, team up with scientists, team up with policymakers, with other investors, team up with corporations, and then team up and actually look at what the most important issues are. Solve for the bottom 60% of the population, and you'll raise everything, and you'll be able to solve it. I think my goal is to look at base of the pyramid solutions, because they will have the greatest impact on the greatest number of people who are going to be affected most in the next 15 to 20 years, and have the least resources or ability, or even information to do anything about it. All they're concerned about is getting food on the table for their families, right? So I feel like those of us who are here online, I mean, we have a responsibility to do for those who cannot do for themselves. And I'm a big believer in, what you give, you make back in different ways in the future. And I just, like to thank you guys for having us, and happy to take questions, happy to debate, argue, get my info from Neha. I'm always willing to have, because I'm always learning something. And I think that's one other thing is, as families, our next generation, we should um, have continual education, because climate change changes every day. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. So being educated on a consistent basis is, again, another important aspect of what needs to be done. So, with that, I will, I guess, close it off. I hope someone got something out of that. But, thank you guys for having me. And I appreciate the work you do. And like I said, I'm happy to support as best I can to really take IFC to the next level in the next 5 years. And I feel that you guys can be the center point of driving this Indian climate hub idea, working with stakeholders. So,
Thank you.
thanks, guys.
Thank you, Guneet.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Guneet. That was a very interesting talk. And I think you correctly mentioned that family offices have to lead. If they lead, others will follow. And you have always been a very passionate champion of investments in climate tech. The multiple discussions that you have had with Neha and me, some of them lasting for over an hour, do reflect that. And I also like what you said about collective compassionate capitalism. Before we move on to the next session, for the online members who have joined us, I would again request you to please change your names to first name and then mention the organization. It just helps us here. And please see if you can try and keep your cameras on, as it helps to communicate better in this phygital environment. Our next session is a sectoral presentation on agriculture by Mr. George Thomas, CEO of Mentera Ventures.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot, Girish, for the kind words of introduction. I have 10 minutes within which to cover a very large sector, agriculture. And, so when you look at it on a long-term view of agriculture, starting from post-independence, it looks like a lot of things have changed, and indeed they have changed. But if you look at it a little bit more closely, I think many things have still remained the same. But there are changes. Let's talk about the changes, and let's then take a look at what's remained constant. Around the time of independence, the big issue was food security. And so if you see policy, priorities, all of that was all around producing more. And most of the production was centered around water-intensive carbohydrate production. So if you see all the policy formulations, including things like procurement policies, are a legacy of that era. You then move into the liberalization phase, where the economy starts to move away from agricultural dependence to the service sector and to some extent manufacturing. And then, with the improvements that you get, especially around foreign exchange reserves, in a liberalized environment, you find that food security starts to recede in the policy framework. Because now you can export food, you can also sort of import food. And so it creates a changed dimension. And things like the milk revolution and the poultry revolution seem to indicate the fact that we were on top of the production factors. But now, as you get into the current period, I think the priorities are changing. And the priorities are largely centered around things which we took for granted in the past, which was free availability of electricity, a very simple production system which was focused around carbohydrates, which is now having to sort of change radically, because as income levels have gone up, carbohydrate is no longer the centerpiece of the plate, the consumption plate. There's a lot more demand for fat and protein where we are deficient, where we need to sort of do a lot of catch up for. But if you see the consistency which you see through this entire thing is the fact that a very, very large part of the population is still dependent on agriculture. And you're talking about close to about 1 billion people who are rural, of whom about 60 to 70% are dependent on agriculture. And they also happen to be the most marginal sections of Indian society. So if you wanted to do impact, this is perhaps the richest tapestry that you would get. Moving to the next slide. We live in troubled times. Even as we speak today, we're talking about, areas which used to get copious amount of rain, not getting any rain anymore. There are parts, we just heard from Delhi that temperatures have reached 52 degrees. It was not heard of. I've lived in Delhi. I was born in Delhi and brought up there. If it went over 40 or 42 degrees when I was young, it was supposed to be a heat wave. And now we're talking about 52. So things are changing, and they're changing very dramatically. So when you look at the previous slide, if you look at it maybe 5 years from now, you'll be looking at even more dramatic changes than what we have looked at in the last 25 to 30 years. Moving to the next slide, there's a lot to be done in agriculture, and anywhere you turn, there will always be the opportunity for you to deliver impact. I'm not going to dwell on all of it because I think there are so many people in the room who've spent the greater part of the last decade exploring areas for investments in agriculture. But the one I'd like to draw attention to is this very big unsaid problem of underemployment in agriculture. And this is really what keeps, seems like a fascinating area to resolve for impact investors. From my perspective, you'll find that the very little effort is going in to create opportunities in the rural landscape, which are linked to agriculture, but not definitely agriculture. So food processing, all the activities that you could take industrialization closer to the farm is also something which would depopulate agriculture without them having to migrate into urban areas as urban labor. So I think among the many opportunities, one of the things that we at Mentera are focused on, apart from looking at value chains within agriculture, is to look at this whole problem of very high underemployment in agriculture. Moving to the next slide, and the next 3 slides are about a couple of examples of things that we've done. Particularly proud of the work that we are doing in Udalguri district, a very less developed part of Assam, and where I just came back from Assam last week. This is the start of a new season there. When we started working in Udalguri district, the price for green leaf, which was paid to small farmers, was about 13 to 15 rupees a kg. And I was actually astounded by the fact that this year, the farmers there are getting 55 rupees a kg. And it's not coming on account of any scarcity or anything of the sort, but it's taken 2 years of effort to get the farmers who are working with us, Rainforest Alliance certified, to produce exceptional quality tea, get good quality yields, and produce safety. And you can see that, the movement is fantastic. We hope that the 200 farmers who are working in this cluster will become a role model for transformation of the tea industry and the way small farmers have played a very marginal role and can now play a very active and productive role. We're trying in the next slide to replicate the same model in mango and also in poultry. The premise is still the same, that if you produce quality, your being a small and marginal farmer or a poultry farm owner should not come in the way of your not being able to realize exceptional value in a well-developed value chain. So this is another experiment. We hope to be announcing an investment in this area soon, as we would be in the poultry space. We can now move to the next slide, where we're picking up an issue which is very common across Indian agriculture. You know, wherever you go, the one common thing that you see, and which is very particularly relevant from a climate perspective, is the degraded nature of Indian soil. The best places where agriculture happens, the numbers that you get are 0.3 to 0.4% of carbon, where the required rate is between 3 and 4%. So hugely deficient carbon levels in Indian soil. And so we're looking at a business which is looking at pyrolysis to produce char, which is really a very good fortification mechanism for depleted soil. And this needs to integrate with social forestry, because we need to have renewable wood for producing good quality char and good technology in pyrolysis to produce exceptional quality char. So this is another transaction that we're looking at, and which looks like one of the ways to resolve a big issue facing Indian agriculture. We'll move to the next slide. So, and I'll actually close my 10 minutes with, again, reiterating fact that there's a lot to be done in agriculture. It's changing very dramatically. And I think the approach which is happening at one stage is still anchored in the old problems of, say, social security. But now you see technologies beginning to emerge, which are doing two very significant things. One is the addressing of climate change issues. We are seeing a lot of emphasis and a lot of emerging technologies which help people to deal with climate change. The second thing that's happening is the globalization of Indian agriculture. And what we're finding is that solutions which work in India are immediately applicable in many other parts of the country. So, you know, a lot of the technology related changes that we're seeing coming out of centers of knowledge in India are very, very applicable to what needs to be done in Africa, especially Northern Africa, parts of Australia, and lots of other places in the country. So with that, I'll end my presentation. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak to you here today.
Thank you so much, George. Very kind of you and a very enriching session. Our next sectoral presentation is on climate. And I would request Starlene, founding partner of Green Artha, to kindly take it up. Starlene, would you like to take it up from here?
From over here?
Yeah, that'll be comfortable for you. Please.
Thank you, Girish. Thank you, Neha, for organizing, and Guneet for suggesting, and everyone else for joining. It's also a pleasure to go after Mintera, and I'll make a point of not including agriculture in our discussion. We do look at agriculture, but more as a tangent when we're looking at climate. There certainly are climate impacts that both impact agriculture and mechanisms, but we look at it as an intersection. When we look at climate, as Guneet had mentioned, last year was the warmest year recorded. Delhi's already hitting higher temperatures. Climate-related disasters are up 83% in the last 20 years. And we spend $16 million per hour on climate-related damage. And so that's a lot of money that could be going into fixing the problem, but is instead going to fixing the impacts of climate. To really keep the planet habitable, it's not enough to say we're going to focus on smaller interventions. We really need to look at large-scale change. And that really means we need to think of this from the perspective of an industrial revolution. How do we change the means and modes of production to create climate impact at scale? And India really is, as Guneet suggested, the critical market in this. At Green Artha, we invest in the highest impact climate innovations. We look at how to de-risk these businesses early, and we work with other investment partners and the larger investment ecosystem to adopt global best practices that will drive climate impact. As part of our work to date, we've set up the Climate Capital Network, which is a network for all climate investors that are active in the innovation space to share learnings. We publish the annual Climate Finance Report. We are on the Global Advisory Board for Project Frame, which brings best practices and impact measurement into climate investing. And we were the founding fund manager at Act for Environment, where we've proven a lot of the approaches that we take to climate investing to date. But when we think about India as an investment market for climate technologies, we have to step back and look at the big picture, which is India is at the inflection point for massive economic growth. We are the fastest growing large economy. We're expecting 6 trillion in domestic spending by 2030, doubling energy demand, doubling manufacturing capacity, and also increasing the amount of buildings yet to be built, which means we have a lot of big long-term assets that are being created in the next 6 years that, if they are created in a way that is not clean, will be polluting for the next 10, 20, 50 years. So we're really at a critical inflection point for investing in climate now. And if we don't, and India's emissions intensity trails out of China, India will use 70% of the global carbon budget, which means it doesn't matter if the US, Europe, Middle East, China, Japan, all are able to meet their climate goals by 2040, which none of them are on track to do. There is no way we will be able to keep the planet even below 3 degrees. So India is critical, and it's critical right now. When we think about how do we decarbonize India's economic development, there's big sectors that are really important. The energy transition, when you have a doubling of energy, you'll also have really significant need to change that energy and how that energy is used, stored, consumed. And there's massive opportunities for energy efficiency. With India being one of the 10 most impacted climate markets as well, we're expecting to see massive growth in energy transition because of the needs for cooling. And India as an IT hub will also see massive additional energy demand that's not factored into the current numbers because of the data requirements related to AI and related technologies. India is doubling its SME and industrial outputs in the next 6 years, which means we have massive opportunity and massive risk if we don't start looking very cleanly at industrial decarbonization. Built environment also is a very large contributor and will be 40%, will have 40% growth in over the next years. And there's a lot of opportunities to look at circular economy in part to take off some of this risk. I will note there is overlap in these numbers. The climate impacts aren't coming out to 100%. That's because there is overlap or intersectionality between many climate sectors. But very fundamentally, if we want to think about how to solve the problem, it very much has to be looking at the emissions intensity or the magnitude of climate impact that can be made times the scalability. So in some instances, a 5% improvement in something like steel production can have a much larger impact when it's done at scale. But similarly, there's instances in which a very large impact is needed. So if you think about like LED bulbs, India has the largest penetration, and it's lots and lots and lots of small products that are making that impact, but because of the very, very massive scale, and those bulbs having a typically 40% efficiency as compared to the market. But very fundamentally, when we look at climate impact and the market, when they're thinking about how are climate innovation dollars being spent, should be looking at what is the climate impact we can get at scale per dollar. And the reason that we need to be doing this and looking at the means and modes of production is because people aren't going to stop wearing sneakers. They're not going to dramatically change their lives. So we as a firm, we know that there's a lot of great work that needs to be done on the consumer side, but we look at businesses that are changing the market. So this is a business that we've invested in, and we do tremendous amounts of technical assistance with these businesses around techno-commercial validation and commercialization support, capital market access. But I share this business specifically because when we started working with this business, they had a small lab scale plant. We've helped them negotiate contracts, including with a power plant. And the reason, very specifically, they followed the last slide, is because they are a producer of green silica, which goes into cosmetics, toothpaste, tennis shoes, tires, etc. And they are now supplying to Nike, Adidas, Decathlon, are in late stage discussions with L'Oreal and Colgate. And they are doing this using waste products as a foundation. So great circularity business, great industrial business, they're a green chemistry business, and they're having massive impact, not being a company selling 5,000 or 50,000 pairs of shoes, but changing it so that all of the shoes that are in the market eventually become green because they're supplying to the big suppliers. And so that's really one of the ways that the market can change, and that India has a fundamental ability to create because of its position now as a meaningful part of the global supply chain. When we think about how to take businesses like this to market, it's not just a matter of providing the right types of fit for purpose capital, which are not necessarily the traditional venture capital and debt that's available in the market. It's also about demonstration with commercial partners or industrial partners to achieve techno-commercial validation. It is very much around commercialization support, so understanding the pricing mechanisms that are going to both enable a customer to buy, but also a business model to be economically viable. A lot of times, because of the economic situation in India, that is a reality for many small businesses and even large businesses, this commercialization piece often means finding a business model that can absorb some of the upfront costs of adoption. When a typical business has 2 months free cash flow and it's going to take 2 weeks to install a new technology, that's 25% of the business's operating cash flow gone, and a real risk of the business viability if they take this on. So they're not willing to also take the risk of putting the capital up front. Finally, we work with all of the companies that we invest in to understand and gain access to capital markets. So we work very closely with debt providers. And I'm sad to see that the team from, I'm sad to see some of our friends from the debt markets are not here today.
They're online.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we've seen generally that building the relationships early and really helping the companies understand what are going to be the requirements, and also working with capital market providers to understand what does success look like for us to be able to take this off, is very much necessary, particularly for hard technologies to be absorbed. We share all of the work that we do in a very open source manner. So these models we share, but to really kind of share another explanation of how India can really be at the forefront of shifting demand, doing so in a cost-effective manner, and doing so in a way that's going to be creating the jobs of the future very much. Is this company Cancave. When they first came to us, they had a great technology where they were making the equivalent of templatized carbon using coconut husk. When they came to us, they said that they wanted to use this, they wanted to build a factory so they could start selling to lithium-ion battery producers. And my first question was, do you understand the commercialization cycle? And they're like, well, we talked to these one people, they said they'd be very happy. We explained the commercialization cycle, and they came back to us 3 weeks later and said, given your feedback, we've started doing integrations with lead acid battery providers. We're planning to go into lithium-ion batteries. They now are selling lead acid batteries in conjunction with 2 brands that have templatized carbon, which mean those batteries cost the manufacturer less to make, sell for 2,000 rupees more, use less of lead and other harmful chemicals, and have a 2-year longer lifespan, meaning
Thank you so much, Sterling.
I had the feeling you might say that.
Thank you so much, Sterling, for very interesting examples. And we now move on to the next session, which is an open dialogue, moderated by Mona and helped by Neha. You should explain the format, Neha.
Yeah. You want to go ahead?
No,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Is everything wired up?
Yes.
Yes.
Or we just have to
Yeah.
start.
Very high.
Hashtag.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, IIC. Thank you, Prachi, for hosting us. Thank you to the speakers for setting the stage. And I think this is a really, it's a fantastic initiative, I have to say, as a member of IIC, that, we've been such an important part of the investor community today, which is, the HNIs and family offices, a category that frankly didn't exist when at least I got into this space several years ago, decades ago, but also up until quite recently. So it's exciting that we have this kind of interest from HNIs and family offices. Definitely adds more color, more, a very interesting dimension to the investor community. I think wherever we have, we're a new fund, UC Empower, and we've started to make investments. And we come across family offices and HNIs on the cap tables, but also in our own fund, we have a large number of such LPs. And the interesting dimension here is that this is an investor community. You guys, people from this community, I would say, what's fantastic about you is that you're risk takers. You have run businesses, you've scaled businesses. You know what it is to take something of an idea to scale, and so you make for great partners. And so this interest that you all have in the impact investing space is, to someone like me, hugely exciting. And kudos to ISC to have created this forum. I think that there's enough that's been said about why India is exciting, why within India impact investing is exciting, and more importantly, why there is so much urgency around the work that we do. I'm glad we picked climate and agriculture, and within that sustainable agriculture as a key focus, because there are so many sectors that we can otherwise talk about. But I think suffice to say that we're a relatively mature impact investing landscape. We sort of move in the sense there are some sectors that are totally new. Climate, frankly, is new everywhere. There are certain parts of the world where certain business models focused on climate and decarbonization or what have you are further along. In India, it's relatively new. But we have examples of financial inclusion. What it took, and Guneet, you talked about getting companies ready from the government standpoint so that investors such as yourself can find it possible to do business here, right? I think financial inclusion has been through that journey. And so there is a template out there which newer sectors can pursue. And I think the investors who came in and helped those sectors grow, whether it's education or financial inclusion or, you know, the front runners, they've shown that it's possible and you can do it really well. I won't get in further into why it is interesting because I think we all understand, but I would love to kickstart this dialogue with people who are sort of online, so that we can have you participate a little bit more. Then it's a larger group too. So if it's all right, I would like to call upon Audrey from Alpha Impact. Audrey, I hope you've been forewarned about this, and I'm not speaking on you. Okay, great. So, Audrey, your perspective on why this is an opportune time for family offices or to look at India as an impact investing destination. We'd love to have your thoughts.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mona, for calling on me. And I know quite a few of you on this call. It's so good to be part of this community, and so grateful to the IIC team for bringing us all here together for all this substantive exchange. I think it is an opportune moment. That there's so much rich content. There's so much pipeline, and we've been at least trying to be active with deploying capital directly since 2007 or so. And in that context, have gotten to build relationships and partnerships and friendships, indeed, with so many of our peers. The opportunity to collaborate and to work together and to co-invest has never been more ripe. And the models themselves, the quality, obviously, of what we're seeing in the models, the entrepreneurial skill sets and so on, has been not incremental, but quite exponential in terms of its evolution. And I mean, some of you will recall, to that end, we've been trying to collaborate with our peers in co-financing these types of social enterprises since 2008. And that's what Artha Impact platform was built for. In fact, we were trying to focus on the due diligence piece, which is always painful and not the most fun part of it. So to be able to partake in these kinds of discussions, to be able to look at some of the models, and our partners, our longtime partners at Mentera, have also helped guide us, and we've had the opportunity to learn so much about what works, what characteristics are critical, what criteria should be applied, and ultimately what impact metrics matter. And it's really in that spirit of, I guess, knowledge dissemination and collaboration that I think the opportunity specifically for family offices is ripe. So for those who are, considering dipping a toe in the waters, even as an externally based family office, albeit with Indian origin, we've been able to have the learnings of, more than at least 30 some odd transactions in recent years. And we look forward to seeing many more spurred on and catalyzed by exactly these types of dialogues. So thanks so much for the opportunity just to say a few words, Mona.
Thanks, Audrey.
Thanks. Great. Thank you, Audrey. I think collaborating and co-financing is really good, is at the heart of what we need to do, especially as we build out the new business models. Fairly early on, I think it all becomes about club deals. And to your point again, Guneet, I don't think there's anybody in competition here. It's about finding the right sort of jigsaw to fit in, right?
I think it's like there's no binary solution,
Correct.
binary outcome. Either we all win or we all lose. Right? So we have to be in it together.
I would like to call upon Yap. Yap, if you can hear me, you're somehow behind the screen for asking me some
Can we
questions.
move this?
How do we?
Or they have
Yap,
this
give us a moment because we have.
So have you turned off the video? The person who's.
He's right behind the screen.
Oh, okay. This helps. Why don't you start?
Okay, so Yap, if you were able to sort of follow our discussion so far, given your wealth of experience of impact investing in India in particular, and FMO's strong focus on the sectors that we're talking about today, climate and agriculture. Actually, decades of funds. Would love to hear your thoughts on, what message would you like to give to family offices, perhaps? Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, Mona, thanks. Jaap Renking, I'm representing FMO. And indeed, as you mentioned, nice to meet you again. Mona, long time no see, but look forward to see you again in person later in the year. IIC also thanks for organizing this meeting and giving us the opportunity to share some knowledge about the impact investing in India. And FMO has been involved in investing in India, well, more than 20 years. And over the years, been involved in a lot of investments in India. In the last 10 years, we are really focused on the financial inclusion, agriculture, food and water, and the energy space and climate change. So really focused on SDG 8, 10, and 13. So all our investments should meet impact criteria. Well, Mona, you asked me to really direct also to the family offices in India. And it is for me also the first time that I really see, local family offices being really interested in the impact space in India. And I think that's really positive. FMO as a development bank always also has as ambition to catalyze other parties into the markets where we are active, and we do see development is taking place. And I can only stimulate local family offices to really interest themselves more into the impact space, because there are really interesting investments to be made. And I think Sharma, who just presented her fund, is really in the forefront of diving into sectors which can really make a difference to society or climate. And and also in her presentation, she highlighted the importance of it, because I think especially in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, the unfortunate results of climate change are so obvious and also so direct, impactful to the population. So that's also, I think FMO also recognized that also for Africa, it's the same. The impact of climate on development is huge. So we really need to take action and invest in all kinds of solutions to reduce in the impacts of the carbon credits and the carbon impact. So climate mitigation, but also the climate adaptation are important sectors to look at and to invest in. And I would also urge the family offices to deep dive into it, because I'm really sure I also saw that in Europe, there are good investments to be made. And I would stick to that, Mona.
Thank you, yeah, very helpful. We have a few other folks from the investor community who would love to share their thoughts, and I could go there, but maybe just a quick check to see if anybody from the family offices who have logged in or are in the room and have any questions on to any of us who's from the investing side or not. Any questions at this stage, either directed to anyone in particular, whoever presented, or or just generally a comment even, which other speakers can possibly pick up on.
Maybe family offices that are online, or somebody.
You can raise your hand whenever you have a thought that you'd like to share. So we'll keep moving along. If Ushnisha is here from BIR on the line.
Hi, Mona. Can you hear me? Sorry, I'm on the road.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Are you able to hear okay?
Yes, we can. We can hear you clearly, Ushnisha. Is it convenient for you to share your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, thankful to IIC to put this together. And um, I think a very interesting juncture, especially for BII as a DFI. Again, we have been in India investing for the last 30 years. 1/3 of our AUM is here. So clearly a really important market for us, and we have gone through like all the cycles of what has been discussed on financial inclusion to healthcare investing and all the pertinent sectors. But I think the three things I would just like to leave the room and just the discussions. I think the first bit is what was initially covered. I think one of the key reasons why we see hesitance from family offices investing is around impact verification and really knowing if the kind of impact that's being created is true. And I think just a thought that DFIs and I would also say BII in general has spent a lot of time working with industry bodies like Impact Principles, which was started by IFC, but we were also a founding member to think about these aspects of impact verification and how do you really make sure across the impact for both people and planet is there, and hence let's say family offices having the confidence on really wanting to put their mustard behind these kind of impact to be created. So I think I just wanted to say that there are ways now to do impact verifications, and we actually look at it very share more if there is interest. I think the second piece is, and somebody mentioned this, I think for us, the risk, return, and impact profile and how we think about allocating assets across our, and we are a multi-sector, multi-geography TFI. So again, just thinking very clearly about how do we allocate our capital has been a learning. So I think again, just from for family offices benefit, even the learnings for India, I'm sure we'll be happy to share and both success and challenges, what has worked for us and what hasn't, because I think there is of course always a different perception of what for each sector works. So again, I think that's just another piece I wanted to leave, because as was mentioned initially, there's a range of return expectations that you can look at, but of course it depends on a family office's strategic as well as appetite to where they want to really double down. And I think again for existing investors, whether it's a DFI or other GPs that we work with, there are I would say pool of assets which are very much available for you to look at and see matches your appetite. So I think that's the second thing. So impact investing has really got that diversity now in India to be able to play with. I think the third thing which I also wanted to just leave as a thought was the fact that as a DFI specifically, more than probably other GPs, we do have a specific mandate to think about mobilization. So whether it's investing, co-investing alongside with us, whether it's a family office coming in at the time of investment alongside, whether it's in a direct company investment or it's a fund. But we also have been playing around with this on this side of secondary sales, which has also worked really well, because again, some family offices looking at some specific pool of assets where they have where they can rely on all the sort of work which has already gone in, which fits their mandate. So then again, you do have that playbook again to look at, whether it's a co-investment alongside, or you look at it at the time of sale secondary. So I think those are some interesting things. And there was somebody who had mentioned about learning. I think there's a lot which, let's say, as DFIs and impact investors can learn from the institutional side of family office investments. And I also see like family offices being quite keen to work with us, whether it's on our net zero strategy, or how we really think about our asset allocation. And that's a big question which most people have. So I'll stop there, just in interest of time, but yeah, happy to answer any questions or thoughts later. Thanks, Mona.
Thanks, Ashisha. Very helpful. I think you touched upon something which I wanted to take up maybe in the course of this discussion also, was on the standardization of impact measurement management. And perhaps Ruchira can speak to that. But Ruchira, if you can just hold your thought first, please. I just want to quickly check if Ms. Ma from Blue 7, a family office based out of Singapore. She's on the call. And if you have any questions, I know you have a lot of interest in India, but it's probably early days for you in India. So this is a great forum for you to ask any questions you might have. If not, we'll move along, but just want to...
Hi, thanks very much. Sorry, it's a bit dark here. I think it's been a pretty interesting session. I attended the session in Singapore in first quarter or second quarter. I think that as a family office based out of Singapore, we have some fundamental questions about how do we actually invest in India. There's all these questions about the gift city and the usual investment flow, foreign exchange, withholding tax issues, which would be helpful for some of us first time to India to maybe if you have like a paper or something that you could share, that would be helpful for us to understand. And secondly, I think for us, being out of Singapore, we have obviously an interest in understanding how the transference of impact models and solutions that you develop for the Indian market, whether some of those could be applicable to Southeast Asia, which is where our neck of the wood is. And one of our primary drivers of interest in looking at India in impact is we believe that you have a couple of very important things. You have a big market, which is maybe not completely homogenized or harmonized, but it's big enough even within a state. And you have a huge pool of talents. As you said, you have India is a country living in multiple centuries or eras. And so from the little that we've seen in engaging with some of the GP funds there, we found that the caliber of discussion and business model and solutions have been very fascinating. So this is also something which is of interest to us as someone who is also interested in Southeast Asia. I think those were some of the primary drivers of our motivation in engaging with India impact businesses and funds.
Sure. Thank you. I'm sure some of these questions can be taken up post the session, in a way that we can get you some of the answers through the IIC platform itself, but also members who will be happy to help you on answering some of these questions very quickly. But great to have your thoughts. Thank you for sharing them.
The Southeast Asia question that you asked, I'm happy to discuss what we've kind of put in place with 7 Southeast Asian countries in terms of agreements to share impact investments, technology. But we can do that offline, and Neha can pass you my details. So that stuff's in place for us.
Thank you.
Similarly for Gift City and all the, the tax related questions.
Absolutely.
Can be very
So, Isma, just to answer you, we plan organizing a session on Gift City separately. And when that happens, we'll keep you posted. And in fact, Neha and I were discussing, we would be delighted to have all our LPs from Singapore who had attended the event in Singapore and even family offices attend that session.
great.
Thank you.
Actually, IMC Family Office. Axel joins us. Maybe. Axel, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. You. Hi. How are you?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for the presentations. I thought, very informative for me. I'm actually working with the IMC Family Office, more on the corporate side. I'm in the corporate VC of the family. And I've taken an interest in India from my previous fund as well when I invested in a mobility startup. And my recent investment in India from the family office was in a regen ag startup in India. I do agree with some of the sentiments around how it can be challenging to measure impact, and everyone, many people have different definitions of what impact is. So, the startup that we invested in, we were not so much looking at impact as an additional measure, but as a direct outcome of what they were doing. As an investor looking to India, I think that, and based out of Singapore, I think initially it was not easy for me to do my due diligence. My first investment was during COVID. And then also trying to understand, you guys mentioned, right, club deals, but, the whole idea, VC is trying to find out which are the best clubs, who knows what really is going on the ground. And, when you don't have that local presence, then you tend to be a bit more apprehensive around what you hear and what to believe. But over time, I think, having a network and getting to know people in India did help us to, make more investments there. So I think today is a good kind of like an intro session for me to understand what you guys are doing, because, I only read the deck on IIC and, I was trying to figure out, what we can learn and what we can do with this platform. I think going forward, I do hope and wish to learn more from the insights that you guys have on the sectoral side and also on the investor landscape. And as a family office which has still a very big corporate that is running, definitely synergies is an important point. So we're not investing only purely for financial return and impact, but also trying to see, are these innovations applicable elsewhere? So, we try to build some of these partnerships even among the portfolio companies. And I think, it'll be good to get to know more investors who are actively doing that, and also entrepreneurs who are actively looking to go out of India, right? Because I think some of the solutions could be applicable in, like, we have operating company in Indonesia, for example, or Thailand. We're doing some agri stuff there. We're trying to see if we can apply or, get some cross collaboration between the companies. So yeah, no, I'm very excited about India. I think it has good fundamentals. Still want to look at deals there, and hope to get to know all of you better in future sessions.
Thank you, Axel.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Fantastic. Chira, could I request you to share from your vast experience, this conundrum of impact measurement and management, how to standardize it? Because we've definitely come a long way from, there is some commonality that's emerging thanks to SDGs, etc. But happy to hear your thoughts.
No, thank you. Thank you, guys. And firstly, thank you for organizing this fabulous session today. I think it's really no surprise that IIC does pioneering work in bringing together stakeholders across the ecosystem and across geography. So much appreciated. And yes, the question you raised, Mona, is a classic and a very important one. And I acknowledge we've come a very long way. As some of you may know, I'm currently running a fund called Synapses that focuses on STEM innovations in climate tech and health tech. But before this, I was at IFC. And we care deeply about impact. We measured impact for every investment that we did. And then besides IFC, BII has its own framework. There are, obviously the UN SDGs. So there are various frameworks out there. And when I look back on the body of work we did and on the long distance we've come, the one idea I'd like to put out there is that we don't need any more frameworks. I think we have plenty, right? So it's not about yet another framework that will get us there. But what's important is to cull from these frameworks the key metrics. And I think maybe less is more in this space, because it's more important to have a handful of metrics that we standardize across markets, across sectors. And we can put them in two buckets. So the way I see it is there are these overarching metrics that are sector agnostic, and job creation is one of them. Women inclusion is another one. So there'll be some that cut across sectors. And then there are others that are sector specific, right? GHG emissions for climate, or patients reached for health, or students reached for education, transactions processed for fintech. So there are sector specific metrics and there are overarching metrics. And in my belief, a combination where you're limiting it to, let's say, 7 or 10 measures that you're doing consistently over time is the more streamlined way to go. And one should focus more on the quality of the metrics rather than the quantity of the metrics. So how good is your measure consistently over time? And how apples to apples is the comparison when you look across different stakeholders measuring those things. So that's where I'd like to focus our energies. But yeah, a few thoughts there, and happy to take questions. And for the family offices from Southeast Asia, I think, there is a lot, particularly in the areas of climate and health, a lot of business models that will cut across country boundaries. And so we see opportunities to have business plans and business models that are demonstrative and that get proven out in India and that expand then to other Southeast Asian economies. And so we hope the collaboration across countries drives both innovation and economic development across the region.
Thank you, Ruchira.
On that, there's actually we've got agreements with 7 governments in Southeast Asia to share technologies once they've been demonstrated in India. On a trial basis, free. So giving it to them.
Wow.
I'm going to share details as and when needed.
Fantastic. That'll be huge.
And Africa and South America.
Yeah, I think especially in the climate space, and Starlene, you'll know this, that people are just creating solutions for the world, really. It's really about how you pace your expansion first within the country and then beyond, and which ones to go to. And having networks is super important.
You can afford it, right? I mean, the majority of the development world cotton has been produced for the last 20 years.
Yes, please.
Just a perspective here, I think great insights, great inputs. And since we are looking at cross-border and cross-cultural, I would say coordination and leveraging on something what is best has happened. One big piece which most of the, I would say, corporates which have become success and they've really gone international is the IP side, and maybe this is one space where how collaboratively we must build an ecosystem so that we are able to build the mechanism of a cost-effective IP piece which can be rolled out across larger geographies. So then as you scale, then the big boys come in to take it to the global level. Because if we are, investing in some of these as an ecosystem, the challenge is they don't have the big bucks to put in the way, the entire opportunities are coming out. And if we've got to really help them first scale across and protect, and then look at it cross-border, I think this is one space where the insights, understanding, and the maybe I would say global policy framework, which could make the big difference in real value creation, and where the family offices or the big funds would like to help them go beyond where they are. And I think that is one food for thought, which I just like to leave as, in media, which could become one of the most interesting pieces beside the communalization. And I completely echo Ruchira's point that we should not boil the ocean. A lot of these pieces are already done in place. Financial metrics or the social impact, cull out the best ones, sectoral wise, communalize, and then the IP piece is one big opportunity as I see to protect and scale. So just food for thought.
That's a great point, actually. Perhaps one of our bigger sessions, like at Prabha, we can have a session on something like this, where there's a larger audience of innovators, of companies who are working on strong ideas and could use some direction on how to protect their IP.
Sure.
I would say there's definitely a lot of concern with startups who are having IP-led businesses around when there are capital constraints to scaling, how to think about licensing and franchising, particularly because they don't have protections. And they know that if they give their technology to the big boys, as you call them, they're really at risk for IP manipulation.
Yes.
It takes very minimal effort to change an IP and get a new IP registration. And so there needs to be a framework for how the entrepreneurs are protected if that is the best way to scale. And in many cases, if they are coming up with technologies, many of which are globally relevant, but most of them are not going to be able to build globally, particularly when you're looking at factories and whatnot. So how do you make sure that the best technologies that are affordable are getting adopted quickly, not just in India, but beyond?
There's already a sort of program in place here in India where I think there's about 64, 70 technologies that we've kind of. Sorry, I said there's already a program that's been started, public-private partnership between the government and various other entities where taking technologies from around the world. The government here is guaranteeing the IP rights, so it won't go to big boys. They're making sure that everyone gets free access to it. Being rolled out. First tech was rolled out in starting. Yeah.
Can I add a few?
Yeah, please come.
Sorry firstly for joining late. I was just at Ashoka University doing a session for high school students, which is their summer thing. And the reason I mentioned that is because, these guys ask such profound and simple questions, and this point of simplicity on just a couple of points that have been raised in the last 15 minutes. One is on the regulations. So lady from Singapore asked about the inbound regulations. And as Starleen knows well, my firm and others have recently done a study for a particular use case, which is US and European foundation catalytic capital. How do you bring that in? But it essentially involved mapping different pathways: equity, debt, direct, indirect. All of these jargons all of us are familiar with: gift city, not gift city, can you blend, et cetera, and just simply laying it out. And more such studies and all can be done, but putting that out there, as these are the pros and cons of the different pathways. So how do you enter capital into India? And the second one is what Ruchira was speaking about, which I couldn't agree with 110% more, which is simplification of impact metrics, which IIC has already done so much work on at the overall level. So job creation or gender. And again, there's a study that USAID and others have put out to create a metric for measuring gender inclusivity in VC portfolios. So that kind of a scorecard, encouraging every investor to weight certain attributes: women in ownership, women in management, women as customers, and DEI policies. And it's not just like a theoretical framework, but an actual measurement scorecard. And different investors are doing this. Now imagine IIC starts pushing this across. Right. And then, of course, sector-specific metrics. So just these two, and the third point also is very relevant, which is then the scalability and the exitability of it. So getting the commercial corporates involved. And last point I want to make is that the role of family offices is so critical. And thank you so much for IIC and all of you guys for doing this, because you guys have the most flexible form of capital. CSR capital has its own restrictions, and institutional foreign American capital struggles to get in. Family offices have the most flexible capital. So if they understand these three things, how do you get it in? How do you measure impact? And how can the scalability come from corporates and all taking it to the next level? Then hopefully the family offices, Aparna and I used to work for one together, and then there's a few other family offices, but there's a need for more. So it's really welcome, this discussion. And sorry again that I'm late.
Can I just make one small point?
Yeah, please.
I was involved in the drafting of the startup policy for the country way back in 2016. And at that time, we did not see that, how impact investing can become a big thing. And so we were looking at what kind of tax benefits should be given to startups, what should be the corporate law benefit, should be the labor law benefit that should be given. And, I was involved for almost 9 months with DPIIT for drafting the entire policy, the tax benefits, etc., etc.
So can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Amarjeet Singh. I lead the startup practice for PwC, and I've been in the startup ecosystem, advisory, policy, etc. for last now 8-9 years. And so I would say that one thing which can be done, as I listen to a lot of you that you want to do, the impact investment is becoming such an important element, is at least sensitizing the Indian government also that from a startup perspective, that there's a class of an impact investment which is important, and there should be some kind of a beneficial regime which should be provided. And I'm saying this because I think usually the government is very receptive around these things. And that could help you in also making the FDI regulation around impact assessment a little more easier. Exit from impact assessment, there could be a little beneficial regime. It's just a question of telling the government also that this also exists. And today I don't think, because when we are talking about tax benefits, we were told that, people can misuse tax benefits, and that's why the tax holiday should be given only after there's an internal board which approves, etc. So there could be a category for impact investment, I think, which could be created. But this needs to go through some kind of a white paper that, this is not just family offices, even there are a lot of impact funds who want to come into India. Maybe this is one suggestion, and I'm very happy to support you guys in case we need to prepare something around this. And there could be something beneficial we can get out of the government also.
Absolutely.
I'll just make a quick few points as well. So firstly, thank you again to ISC for having this very opportune discussion, and again, apologies for being late. But I think maybe the 2 or 3 points, I'm wearing the hat of Asha Impact, which is my previous organization, where our primary focus was to bring more domestic family offices and HNIs into the fold of impact investing. I think Alex, if I got the name right, made a very important point about impact access. So being co-linear with the scale up of the social enterprise as well. So I think in our conversations, and especially around the time the social stock exchange was being set up, we were part of some of the early discussions there as well. There is no concept of a social enterprise per se as a legal entity, right? So how do you really define impact? What we heard from social enterprises today, especially as the lines of impact investing and commercial investing are also blurring. You have the likes of a Sequoia, Axel sort of participate with foundations and impact investors. So why is a social enterprise really going to be interested in all the extra reporting, etc., on impact? And what we heard, I think, is very critical. I mean, as they're also thinking about scale up and going, going for more scale up capital, is that some of the business metrics really need to count for impact. So as my business grows, I mean, that's really what should really count as impact. Given the fact that I'm working with an underserved segment, making sort of goods or services sort of available to a class. I mean, very sort of generic way of putting it, but I think the collinearity of impact with business is sort of the larger point here. And I feel early days for the social stock exchange, but at least in some of the discussions that we were having at the time that the high level committee was set up, idea was really for impact capital, from family offices, or to come in and use this as a mechanism to bring in much needed sort of impact capital in India. I mean, baby steps right now. I think we've just started to do a couple of listings that we'll see how that goes. But that was sort of the larger vision with which at least some of these regulatory frameworks were brought in. And with the Gift City, of course, I think that could be another huge. Thank you so much. Coming back to folks who are online, if Leo Lee from Grace Harmony is there, would you like to take the floor, share thoughts, ask your questions?
I think he's trying.
He's there, but he won't.
Okay, so in case you will come in later, if you can hear me, Leo is there. Um, Leo, while you get ready, maybe I can ask Robert, Robert Rubinstein. Nice to see you. We see you a lot on LinkedIn. Thank you for joining, and do share your thoughts, Robert.
Well, it would be really nice if small investors could participate in investing in India. I know there's lots of problems with compliance and regulation, but India is definitely the flavor of the month. You have so many things in place, and the downside is if it doesn't work, we're in much bigger trouble than if it does work. So it's yeah, you just have so many things happening in the same. And also, most important, my wife loves India, which is the best reason for investing over there. And huge fan. So I think that it's, but you also have a lot of money in India. I don't know if it's that necessary to have to look so much outside of India. There's also a lot of wealth within the country. And it's important to mobilize that group also, as well as external investors. But the perception is it's very hard to do business in India. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I can't really say there are challenges. There are challenges everywhere. Nowhere is smooth and easy. But it has so many things in place. So I don't know if you're going to have to really work that hard in mobilizing capital. There are some significant problems with investing in China, which has made it for many less appealing, and India more appealing. So I would think that you wouldn't have to work that hard to mobilize capital, but I would also try to focus a lot on the asset owners, the family offices, the private banks in the country itself, and also try to create vehicles that small investors can also participate in illiquid the regulation and the compliance rules in India. But that would also be helpful. I mean, that's basically how Japan pays for its deficit. Most of the money is coming from small local investors. So I'm a big fan. And I think the potential is quite large, and also the fact that India is very good at working with very little resources, doing a lot with very little, and making it cheaper, better, faster, quicker, etc. So that could be a great innovation hub rather than everyone running to Silicon Valley for that. So, and better sense of humor. I had my best event where I spoke was in India, and people have a great sense of humor and are very straightforward and open. So it was great fun. So I don't think you have too many challenges going forward. I don't know how the coalition government will influence things with relation to the economy. But you need to, I would say, try to make retail investors possible to invest in illiquid assets, in illiquid projects via VCs in India. Try to do that also outside of India, and also try to unlock some of the institutional money within the country. You know, there's a lot. It's a continent. I mean, there's a lot over there, and try to address the issue of the perception it's impossible to get anything done in India. You know, outside of India. You know. So that will also, as people, you know, work more and focus more on India and not just the stock market in India, which is easy for external investors, but also the opportunity there. It's always, you know, why are the rich so rich? It's not because they're brilliant. It's because they get access to the best deals. And those that are not rich don't get access because they're not allowed to invest in private equity. At least you have to start at 250,000 or 100,000 of that. So let's focus on the small investor and not just on the big investor.
Thank you. Thanks. That's a great thought. And I think some baby steps have been made with the AIF minimum coming down to $50,000. You know, and below that, the perception within the government is that unless you have that much to invest, you're not probably ready for this kind of an illiquid, long-term, risky bet. So, but you know, also on the flip side, the mutual fund industry boomed in the space in the space of like 2-3 years, 4 years really. And so yeah, but your message is spot on, Robert. Thank you so much. I'm just mindful of
One
time.
other thing that you might want to look at, there is a woman who used to be global, the head of Deutsche Bank Wealth Management in the United States, Gloria Nealand. And she quit because she didn't really like the company anymore and left, and then came back to do impact investing. She started a company called TriLink Global. And she went a completely different route, the most difficult route that you could do. She decided, I'm not going for institutional money at all. I'm going to get regulated in 50 states for retail investors. And the reason she did that is because institutional investors, you know, they pull out the money very quickly and they change their mind, where retail investors are willing to give new opportunities more of a chance, and they don't switch as quickly as large institutional investors. I know it was very complex, it was very hard and expensive to get regulated in all 50 states, but she did it, and particularly to access retail investors and make it easier for them, but also make it safer for her, so she's not so dependent of institutional investors pulling out, you know, millions from one day to the next.
It's amazing. Can I, thanks, Robert. Can I also now ask Tassos, if you're there online, giving their presence. Thank you for staying on. I don't know which time zone you're dialing in from, but happy to hear all your thoughts.
Hi everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. Gunit was kind enough to suggest that I join. I'm Tassos. I head our Sustainable Finance Office at UBS out of Hong Kong. And basically, we do quite a lot of work with in the wealth, in the corporate side, in the philanthropic side, and we speak to our clients around how to integrate sustainability and impact. And we talk quite a lot around the concept of transition and the impact that one can achieve through their own business. And less about, of course, in the public markets, we have our own, the products that we have for our clients. But I think increasingly, we recently issued a Global Family Office report, which is publicly available. And I think one of the things that we're increasingly seeing is that our clients who are dual-hatted, having both a business but also doing the investment, they're starting to see the urgency and the need to drive change in their own business operations. And I think the reason why they see that is because that's what they have more control of, and it's more easy to drive that change and impact. So that was just one observation that I had. I also have some observation more broadly in terms of, I think Guneet in the beginning was talking about taking a long-term view. I think that's also quite important. India, and we're sending the same kind of message. I spend a lot of time also speaking with people here in Hong Kong and the government. I'm always thinking about the theory of change, even at the country level. And that's going beyond a national contribution plan. It's about what would your impact report going to look like if you were to draft it today, 5 years from now? And what do you want to be known for? Beside if climate tech or agriculture is two areas that are important for the country, and see then how can family offices and private capital help in those two areas. I would like to highlight something that also has come to attention to me. I don't know whether the team is familiar with a framework that's called ASCOR, ASCOR. That's a framework that's been developed by the Transition Pathway Initiative. And it basically is what it stands for. It's the assessment of sovereign climate related opportunities and risks. India is being assessed there about its strengths and its weaknesses. This is a framework actually that quite a lot of institutional investors are using when they're looking at sovereign debt. And the reason I'm highlighting that is probably something that government also needs to be influenced of how the profile and how the country is being presented out there, because some people will be looking at that information in order to make decisions. And maybe one last point, if I may, we recently also did quite a lot of interviews, unfortunately not in India, but we just more broadly in Asia, we wanted to understand a little bit where family offices are in this whole impact investment space. And it's interesting because we're noticing different personas. We are seeing advanced family offices that are willing to almost even move to 100% of their portfolio into impact. But we're seeing quite a lot of family offices just staying on the sidelines and being in what we call exploring still, but not willing to commit money. And it was the usual things that have come up. It was performance, and can I actually get performance commensurate to what I already get through my investments? There was the challenge of measurement and the KPIs. And then the biggest question was, okay, and from an asset allocation perspective, how do I start? And where can I get access to, I mean, Robert was just making here, right? Access to good deals, how I can co-invest, how can I leverage effectively due diligence that others have done so I don't have to be replicating that activity. And these are all things that we, even as a bank, we're trying to figure out of how we can be more supportive in order to accelerate and the speed and scale at which more private capital flows in those deals, which we need to face it, right? Liquidity is very thin. So it's very difficult there when you lock the money, there is no secondary market. So people need to be prepared and recognize that, yes, it comes with a lot of impact, but it also comes with a lot of liquidity risk that they need to be ready to take. And I appreciate my comments are not India specific. I apologize for that, but this is kind of the type of conversations we are having right now, more broadly in this space, in this region.
Sure. No, that's fine, because I think the questions, concerns are quite universal, and different countries are not in a very different place when it comes to evolution of impact investing. If anything, the concerns would be similar. If I may ask Anna from...
I think Anna's dropped out.
Anna's dropped off.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. And we have
Karan?
If you're happy to share your thoughts, please do. Thanks for waiting.
Hi, I'm Tarni. I advise uh, asset managers and asset owners as well on impact investments in India and in Southeast Asia. So I think what I would like to add to the conversation is really the importance of constituting blended finance structures for investments into climate and impact investments in general. So this is a very nascent space, and there's a lot of conversation around blended finance. But when it comes to the reality, and I know that IIC is doing a lot of great work in this space. It's about having those case studies, pilots of actually implementing a few structures, experimenting, and coming out with some solid examples that will set the scene for attracting further inflow of private capital in a de-risked manner. So that's what I would really like to add, and this is what I'm seeing at all stages, from early stage to late stage investments. The great need for blended finance, and again, as it was mentioned in previous conversations, it's there is a lot of capital investment that needs to go in to the space, and therefore, there is the need for debt. And there's the need for catalytic capital. That's it from me. Thank you.
Yes, we've already, the time is up, but it'll be great to have some final comments from Shivank, from Sagana.
Thanks, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, thanks, IC, for organizing this again, and thanks for giving me the opportunity. I think we talked about a lot about foreign family offices investing in India, and I think that Sagana, we are kind of helping them doing that. We are working very closely with about 40 family offices across Europe and helping them invest across funds and direct investments in India. One of the direct investments in which we are in advanced stages of diligencing, Starling is already an investor there. So Cancri is something that we are taking up internally. And I mean, it's really wonderful to see on how the foreign family offices with very limited resources of investing into India, because the regulations can be really tricky sometimes, are so interested to invest in funds as well as directs. We have invested about close to about 5 funds and about 6 direct investments. And we have mandates of family offices which want to do about at least 6 investments across food and ag, healthcare, energy in India. So just facilitating that, just seeing their zeal and the energy in and the way in which they're seeing India and the growth is simply incredible. There are bumps for them sometimes when there is rematerialization that they have to do, or share certificates, or they have to obtain PAN. But for them, we are trying our best to facilitate that, giving them a platform where they can smoothly invest into India. And I think they really believe in our growth story. And the best part here and how we differentiate from is the kind of risk that we take, because most of our investments that we have done, we have entered at a really early stage. Even on the healthcare side, we are doing deep biotech investments. Even on the energy side, we are going really deep on the energy side and the climate side and battery technology. So, I mean, all these investments require 8 to 10 years of gestation period, which is very difficult for a fund to take. And I think it's the responsibility of family offices and advisors like us to guide them in the right direction and help them to invest in very high risk investments, which can make their capital more catalytic and help them to actually grow the investments all across. So, I mean, it's incredible what's happening right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Shivank. And if there are any final thoughts or Comments from anyone? Happy to take it now. Otherwise, we'll call
One
this.
observation.
Yeah, sure, Srini.
I actually have a bunch, but let me restrict it to one which I find rather interesting. That 3 years out of a pandemic, we don't hear any conversation about health. Yeah. What I also find interesting is that while there is a little bit of a conversation about insurance and making healthcare affordable for the patients, unlike say in climate action agriculture, where there's a whole bunch of financing and investing solutions for enterprises or the practitioners, there's practically nothing in healthcare. I also see in the slides Girish shared earlier, healthcare was the lowest in investment and in transactions. Then I wonder if suddenly that's going to become front and center while we focus on climate. The first impact is going to be on health of population. So demographic dividend and what have you aren't going to do any dividend if people are just unfit to work.
No, great point, and maybe I think absolutely in sync. But as startup investors, the key pieces that where you find these technologies and the navigation on healthcare is much, I would say, challenging because of the clinical trials for each country, and then at times the ecosystem exists maybe in certain places in Europe. And maybe US and maybe a few other places, but like India, the Supreme Court gets in when you have to manage the clinical trial pieces for multiple things. So the policy side, I think, is another angle where some of the cross-border pieces, but locally definitely. Why I say this is because having been, out of my 33 plus years of corporate life, 1/3 has gone into healthcare, having set up Max Healthcare or Boston Scientific in India. When I look back, I think the ecosystem definitely exists. Maybe it's more local versus the global, which is without doubt. I think that's another area of opportunity because only a healthy nation is a wealthy nation. And globally also, whether we do in agriculture, whether we do in water, whether we do it in energy, every space somewhere, a human being is impacted and his health, I think, is at the center. But a point well made. I think as a part of the ecosystem, the opportunity exists. How do we synergize is where ultimately, the impact would be. So, but point well made, and great for bringing this up. Couldn't agree better. But I think one piece I just like to go back as I conclude my piece, the Alex mentioned, which is also an opportunity. I think that is just not for India. Like they are looking at India as one of the key spaces, and it's complete salute to you, Stalin, that you've kind of created that framework to assess the right pieces to take it to that ultimate level where it can be monetized with whatever portfolios you are focusing. I think the awareness, the information, the education, and the timings of when you move in, right from the angel investment side or a seed capital side to the next stages, I think we need to get into, and I don't know whether IC or through the engagement across can create a kind of a, I would say, repository where folks like Alex or what Robert mentioned, that there could be opportunities where individual investors would like to come in versus funds, I think can be shared across. And I believe that is one place where truly it become a global village so that we cross leverage and make that larger impact as we all move ahead. But I think absolutely an exciting times ahead, and hopefully we all would not just make the social impact but co-create wealth is also as important.
Just would like to we've been in the impact investing space, installing the example you brought and the iron kettle example which Mentera gave requires a lot of work before that, right? So I hope that the 20 billion to 1 trillion journey also has a catalytic component where on outcomes you are able to incentivize and also give the technical assistance. So when we talk about the dual heart, the reason why we are here is also because to serve the greatest needs of the world and of India. And it's good, there are people at different stages, but when we talk about 20 billion to 1 trillion, a part of that, even if it's 5%, 2%, has to go into the catalytic phase. And from where Grey Matters Capital sits, a family foundation, right? An impact investor. Like Karthik mentioned, we have flexible capital, but we really need to aggregate and allocate, so that the pipeline can be built. Because these companies are not going to come suddenly manifest in the growth phase, right? And so that allocation of capital, whether UBS does it or other does it, when they're actually looking at deploying, or Sagana does it, right? At the catalytic stage, even 5% comes in, it'll be hugely important. Then we can talk about IP, secondary markets, and things like that, which are all needed. We also need the plumbing for impact investing, which a lot of people have talked about, because the data which I have is that like 10 times the investments in SDGs have gone up, but 12% outcomes, right? So we have to do it in a different way. So I think we should do differently now with the dual heart, and at least 5% should go at the catalytic end of the capital.
Just adding on to what Smita said, I think so, absolutely. I think that's how the philosophy of impact investing even came up. But today, I think I'm forgetting who the lady was who made the point on blended finance. But I think exploring alternative, routes are also probably going to be helpful for startups at this stage. I mean, obviously you need the equity capital to come in, and blended finance, at least in India, has been seen more on the debt side. But there is absolutely a need for more catalytic capital, and that's another role for family offices to consider, given the flexibility of capital.
Exactly. Now, just adding to that, even if you disaggregate the capital, you don't need to put it in a fund or a facility kind. Disaggregate it, right, for impact, better impacts, better, financing, or better, a revenue line, or it's a blended finance structure where you pull in. But at least a part of that capital went from 20 billion to 1 trillion, if that's the goal of IIC to catalyze, whether internal or external, from retail investors or others, right, should be on the catalytic phase. And if disaggregated, so be it. Like you're putting in most in the commercial, put 5% in the catalytic, and let it come through to create that particular pipeline. Otherwise, we are still at the mercy of the commercial capital to come in and fund or bootstrapped entrepreneurs. We are not fueling the pipeline.
What you're saying is today most of it is working because of serendipity.
Correct.
Yeah, and magically pipeline doesn't form.
Could I make a comment?
Yes, please.
For 25, 30 years, I've been constantly hearing from the so-called big boys, the mainstream investors, that impact in ESG is philanthropy. There's no profit. It's bad management. They're bad teams. There's no pipeline, blah, 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 blah. And constantly repeating this, and it's not profitable. Yet no one confronts any of the institutional investors with their nonsensical claims that all hedge funds make 30 to 40% returns, which is a lie. Most private equity firms make 30 to 40% return, which is a bigger lie. And all fund managers beat the benchmark, which is a mega lie. So they've been selling this garbage for decades, and no one confronts them with this. And when we started years ago, we started 26 years ago doing the first international summit on ESG and impact, and did it 40 times. Everybody used to say to me, Robert, this is interesting about ESG and impact. Do you have any research that shows there's no underperformance at worst or an outperformance at best? And I stupidly used to send all the research because there's loads of research. And then I finally realized, I had the aha moment, which we all have, that this was not about proof. This was about belief. And I looked at how much research was done on subprime collateralized debt obligations that caused the financial meltdown. And I'm sure there's an obscure university in Manitoba that did the research, but nobody read it. And how much money went into it? Everything. And that's when I stopped sending the research. And there was a Dutch endowment that had 500 million. And the CEO said to me, we're going to start doing impact. We're not going to do it well. We're going to make mistakes, but I'm going to start. And he asked his wealth manager, could you do that? Let's start with index investing, simple. And the wealth man, no. If you do that, you're going to lose lots of money. So the CEO says, okay, I'll go find another wealth man who will do it. And that wealth manager said, no, I'll do it. So every year he did a little bit more. And then after about 5 or 6 years, he said to me, the most important thing, he said, Robert, it's really not that hard to do impact investing if you want to do it. It's just really hard to do if you don't want to do it.
Good one.
All right.
And remember, there's 5 times more wealth than there is GDP. There is no shortage of money.
Touche. With those golden words, I would like to wrap this up. And there's so much enthusiasm, and with that, I can rest. On behalf of ISC, I can say that we go back home very inspired. Such a session requires a lot of work in the background, as you all know, and that's why I'll have to look at my little paper so that I don't miss out when it comes to thanking people. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to everyone who contributed to the success of today's session. Firstly, heartfelt thanks to Prachi, who's, I think, on her 4th cup of coffee already, and Dell Foundation team for graciously offering us the office space. A special appreciation goes to Guneet, who's packing now. I think he has his flight, for traveling all the way from Hong Kong to only deliver this very thoughtful keynote address. His insights were truly valuable. Thank you, George, if you're still around, and Starlene for providing us with deeper sectoral insights. Mona for expertly moderating and balancing a phygital world. I think that was amazing. The dialogue, bringing diverse perspectives to the forefront. I also extend my deepest thanks to all the family offices and IC members, especially who flew in today to join us and share their thoughts. Your participation was essential to the event's success, as I always say. Not the least, our smashing IC team, who magically, despite the geographical locations, they end up putting up a good show. Girish for being a fabulous captain of the ship. And today's team, Sonali and Sahil, who are already waiting at the cocktail place, reserving tables for us. So as we wind today's session, we are already, we have another pipeline session in the pipeline, the Nordic and Northern European chapter, which is the 7th chapter of the Indian room. It's happening on the 2nd of July in Mumbai at the Grand Hyatt. Very similar flow for the day, but we'll have some of the Nordic investors that we will be convincing with all you good people. Now, before we move to Grand Hyatt, there is a little video that we have made. As you all know, this is a Prabhavya, the flagship conference of ISC. And the team has put up a little video for all of you to convince you further to join us. It'll just take a quick few minutes, and then we'll take you to the cocktails at JW Marriott.
I believe in India's potential for growth. Come join hands with us to make it a reality.
I believe in India's potential for growth. Come join us to make it a reality.
I believe in India's potential for growth. Come join hands with us to make it a reality.
I believe in India's potential for growth. Come join hands with us to make it a reality.
I believe in India's potential for growth. Come join hands with us to make it a reality.
The UK and India strongly believes in India's growth potential spurred by its climate-smart, innovative enterprises. We look forward to a continued partnership.
I believe in the India's potential for growth, not only for India, but what it can do towards development of the world. India really possesses that capability, so come join us to innovate, to accelerate this social development for India and for our regional and other colleagues around.
Don't see you at from home, I guess. Thank you. So we are all moving to JW Marriott, just a walk away from there. So thank you. This is amazing. No, that's true. They had a lot of people. I think everyone.
He's coming out to Delhi.
Yes. Yeah.
You also be
Anybody got night? Thank you very much for joining us. I can see and